I was impressed by both.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting on the 3rd of August, 2020. Call the meeting to order. And tonight's invocation, we'll ask Mr. Huddleston if you wouldn't mind, and then please stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, we ask for your presence and your blessing tonight as we conduct the business of the city. Help us to make decisions that are good for all in our community, for their safety and their health. We ask that you watch over all of our first responders and our medical and health professionals as they deal with this current pandemic. We also ask that you watch over and bless our military servicemen and women, both here and abroad. And also please watch over our East Coast residents, help keep them safe and dry as a hurricane, a storm approaches our East Coast. We ask all these things in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Lisa. All right, Gloria, let the roll call show that everyone is present tonight.
So noted.
Mayor McFarland, we have just 1 minute that were submitted, so I move approval of the City Council regular meeting minutes from July 20th as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, claims against the city.
Mayor McFarland, I move to accept and pay the claims dated July 15th through July 28th, 2020 as presented.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting agenda approval. I don't know if we're going to have an executive session tonight, but if we do, can I make this conditional? My move of the agenda conditional on if we have the executive session, I'm going to move the minute or the notes, the not notes, but the reports prior to the executive.
You can, but I think staff's intent, and I'll defer to Mr. Raines, but I think staff's intent of the executive session is it's on there regarding a specific item.
Right.
So if you want to go into executive session, you would do it prior to, I believe it's item K1. Let me look at
It
the.
happens to be the last item too,
Yeah,
though.
so it would be prior to item K1.
Oh, prior to K1, okay.
Yeah. We wouldn't have an executive session at the end of the evening. 'cause the
Okay, so
item
then I don't
is-
need to move the reports per se.
Correct.
Okay, all right, then I will rescind my change in the, yeah. Any other changes or any other request to change?
We have none, Mr. Mayor.
Council? Public? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So move.
Second.
And moved and seconded to approve tonight's meeting agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No special presentation tonight, so we'll go right to consent agenda items. All items listed with an asterisk are considered routine matters and will be enacted by one motion and one roll call vote of the council. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a member of the public so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence of the agenda. Does anybody have anything you want to change or pull off the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to
Mayor
approve.
McFarland, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Cortzen.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, based on our situation, we are going to not allow the public comments tonight. Hopefully at some point in time, we'll get back to some normalcy where we or we'll figure out how we're going to do this. But at this point in time, we'll suspend the public comments and we'll move to item I, which is award of contracts. The first one is I-1. Consider ordinance number 3212. Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council. Staff recommends that the Mayor and City Council award a contract for professional services to each of the selected firms listed in Exhibit A to provide professional services on an as-needed basis for all city departments. In order to provide these professional engineering support services for city departments and small projects, staff seeks to establish a pre-qualified list of consultants to provide non-exclusive professional consulting services on an as-needed basis. We went through a request for qualifications process and had 74 firms submit their qualifications and went through an evaluation process and determined that our on-call list for this year would be the 36 firms that are listed on Exhibit A, and I'm not going to go through each of those firms. You have that to review. So the total aggregate for any one firm cannot exceed $150,000 with no one-time contract, single contract, exceeding $50,000. That's a $25,000 increase from our last on-call services. That's going to give us a little more flexibility to be more responsive, meeting the needs of our departments when we have to respond to some of these fast-moving projects. A good example of how we've used that to our advantage is a upcoming contract that you're going to be considering in a future meeting for a construction manager at risk. We were able to use our on-call process to have that contractor engage with us to skip about 8 weeks of process, not having to bring that first part of that CMAR process or project to you. We were able to do that under our on-call once we knew who that contractor was and they were on that list. So it really does save a lot of time. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Donna?
Kevin, out of the 36 of those companies, how many were local? Do you know?
I did not go, we don't have a lot of professional service contractors that are local. With our maintenance program, which is coming up on the next meeting, there's a lot of locals on that list, but not on this list.
Okay, thank you.
So how do you vet this group of people?
Well, we look at what we need for professional services, and we've got a list of, it's a matrix that's laid out. So each firm submits their qualifications, and then we go through that matrix and we determine what specialties do they provide. Some people are very focused on their scope. They only do landscaping. Others do a variety of different services because they're a larger firm. So you just basically go through and you fill in that matrix. How many boxes do they check? And then we determine their qualifications based on what they submitted. Have they worked on projects like the ones that we anticipate working on? Or have they worked in this area or on projects similar to what we might be thinking about? And all these qualifications are very different, so it does take a lot of time to go through that and determine which ones might meet our needs the best.
Okay.
But you'll see we picked 36 firms.
Yeah.
Last year, for instance, with our professional services, we used 15 different contracts during that year. So that gives you an idea of how often we might use that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Thank you, Kevin. All right, I'll entertain a ordinance number, please.
Ordinance number 3212, an ordinance of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, approving the terms and conditions of 36 agreements with various companies for the purpose of providing various professional services for fiscal year 2021, authorizing expenditure of public funds and authorizing execution by the city manager of the 36 agreements.
Mayor McFarland, I move approval of ordinance number 3212 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Courtson.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. Right, next item on the agenda is I-2. Consider ordinance number 3213. I don't see the police chief here, but is someone going to represent? Yes, sir.
I was gonna take a guess and say it was him.
Proposal from Motorola.
Okay, well, good evening, Mayor and Council, and if you want to turn the lights out on me later, just... the Casa Grande Police Department requests authorization to purchase 9 Motorola APX 8500 mobile radios prior to the arrival of the 9 replacement vehicles. The total amount for which the spending authority is being requested is $68,191.87, and the purchase would be through the Arizona State contract. Reason being is that the current migration to the Pinal County 800 system is unscheduled to go online between September and October of 2020. The 9 replacement vehicles the Casa Grande Police Department is scheduled to receive will come with the 800 compatible radios, and the estimated delivery date for these vehicles is stated in January, but I heard it actually might be pushed out to February, even March now. And the mobile radios in the 8 Caprices and the 1 Tahoe that are scheduled to be replaced are still currently used daily. And these radios in these vehicles are not 800 megahertz compatible. By purchasing the mobile radios for the new replacement vehicles ahead of time, we can bridge this gap and use the new mobile radios in the vehicles, which will allow patrol to use them until the replacement vehicles are in and upfitted. And that could actually, with the upfitting, that could be now March, April. And so the installation of the mobile radios in the old vehicles, once they're done and swapped over, can be done in-house. And talking to Kevin, he says basically the only cost we're gonna have is pigtails, and that's $20 per vehicle for $180. Once the new vehicles are ready for patrol, then we would take them out of those vehicles and put them back into the new ones for the upfit. And this will prevent us from having patrol officers drive Caprices and work solely off the portable radios, and we don't think this would be a safe or practical alternative. And the other option we had was flashing the radios, but those radios are old and they're no longer going to be serviced by Motorola by 2023, and that's $2,000 a radio for $18,000, so $180 possibly versus $18,000. And that's why we're requesting the use of these, or actually the purchase of the Motorola radios earlier. And then when they come before you for the actual replacement vehicles, you should see that cost minus these radios.
Okay. So you're just going to purchase radios early?
We just need to purchase them earlier, because when we factored in the time frame, because when Kevin was up here before you, prior to, he was asking how many vehicles were going offline and everything, figuring that, you know, when the new vehicles come in, they're going to have the new radios in, so he didn't factor that in, to my understanding. And with this gap, us going to the 800 megahertz system, you know, by September or October, that's a really good thing, but that's going to push out these vehicles from being in and us being able to communicate with those vehicles.
Okay. Any questions, Matt?
I'm gonna ask it. I feel responsible. So if we flash those 9 radios and they're good till 20, why couldn't we just flash those and put those in the cars when we replace them?
Because after 2023, they're no longer serviceable.
That's 2.5, 3 years. I mean, we're gonna have to buy radios. We're always gonna be buying radios, so.
And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna offset it where, okay, now we got a vehicle that's gonna last, if it's a take-home vehicle, it could last 8 years. If it's a patrol vehicle, it could last 5. So if you don't buy it with the new upfit and put it in with the new upfit, then you could have a radio go out in a new vehicle that's not gonna be under warranty or anything, not serviceable, then all of a sudden we might be before you saying, okay, now we need $8,500.
Then we gotta buy a radio anyway, so, I mean.
Didn't you say it was
But
18?
it just takes the offset of the timing of all the purchases, because now you'd have a vehicle, you spend, I'm not sure of the price, you know, $60,000, $70,000 for a vehicle, then all of a sudden halfway through, now we gotta find $8,500 to make that for the rest of the service life.
And didn't you say it was $18,000 to up to,
It's
Whatever.
$18,000 to flash them all.
to flash them all? Okay. And if we don't pay $18,000?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a savings of $70,000. Just a thought. That's how I run my business, try to save a little money.
That's fair. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing that, I will call for an ordinance number 3213, please, Gloria.
Ordinance number 3213, an ordinance of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting a proposal from Motorola Solutions, Inc. for the purchase of 9 APX 8500 mobile radios and associated equipment for the city's police department, authorizing expenditure of public funds and authorizing execution of a contract with or purchase order to Motorola Solutions, Inc. in accordance with the terms and conditions submitted to the Arizona State Procurement Office bid list.
Mayor McFarland, I would move for passage of ordinance number 3213 as presented.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes, I'm gonna vote yes, because it does make sense, but I have to ask the question. And he did a great job of answering it.
Councilmember Cortson.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, next item on the agenda is item J, which is our boards and commissions. First of all, I want to thank everybody who currently serves on our boards and commissions, because it's important to the city, and we appreciate your service. Tonight, under item J1, we're considering approving the appointment of Brett Benedict to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the term to expire on November 7th, 2023, and also approve a waiver for the number of committee memberships rule. So does anybody have any comments on the appointment, or other than to say thank you for your service? Brett's been on it before. I think he was a good member before. So he's an experienced community member. So does anybody have any? Donna?
Mayor, I just want to mention something. This was the first time that you and I have had the pleasure of interviewing so many candidates via, a different way. We usually do it one-on-one, in person, and we had to do it by phone.
Yeah.
And so it's just a different time that we're in. So it was hard not to be face-to-face, but we really had some great candidates, so.
It's good to
A lot
know.
of his expertise comes back to me. He was the president of my 4-H club years and years ago.
So he has you to credit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, seeing or hearing no other comments, I will entertain a motion to approve Brett
Move
Or-
approval.
for
Second.
Benedict. Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Benedict. He also is a current member of the Historic Preservation Committee. And I know in talking to Mr. Tice, he appreciated having somebody with his experience on the Preservation Committee. So, and Brett was willing to, again, continue or add to his service on that. So he is again up for that nomination, along with Tremaine Rusaw and Earl Guy. So we have 3 new members for the Preservation Commission, and also with terms that expire on August 1st, 2023. Does anybody have any comments, other than to say thank you to these 3
Absolutely.
individuals
Appreciate
for their
it.
service? Okay,
Appreciate it.
I'll entertain a motion to approve these members.
So move. Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve Brett Benedict, Tremaine Rousseau, and Earl Guy to the Historic Preservation Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Again, thank you for your service. The last is considering approving the appointment of Bill Belding to the Board of Appeals with a term to expire on August 4th, 2024, and to approve a waiver for the number of committee membership rule. Does anybody have any comments or questions about Mr. Belding? He actually was a candidate for one of the other positions, and he was willing to, because we had extra folks applying for the planning and zoning, so he was to move to the Board of Appeals, which we actually still have 2 openings, do we not, Gloria? Yeah, so we still have 2 openings, so if there's anybody out there who would like to be on the Board of Appeals, please get with Gloria, get with her office, and fill out an application, and we'll, Donna and I would be glad to interview you. So with that being said, then I'll entertain a motion to approve Mr. Belding for the Board of Appeals.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Mr. Belding, and thank you also to all the other members previously mentioned. Next item is item K, which is our consider resolution K1 number 5253, establishing a City of Casa Grande Relief Fund Plan. Mr. Raines.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff is asking the mayor and council to consider a resolution approving the City of Casa Grande proposed Community Relief Fund Plan, authorizing funding and budget allocation for the business and nonprofit, as well as the residential assistance program, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute any and all documents and approve all actions necessary to establish and implement the direction and the intent of the plan. As the mayor and council is well aware, on May the 27th, Governor Ducey announced a plan to release CARES Act funds to local cities, towns, and counties. The allocation to the city of Casa Grande was $6.7 million. The parameters of the governor's plan allocated the CARES Act funding specifically to be utilized by the local jurisdictions for salaries and employee-related expenses for public safety, which included police, fire, 911 communications between the months of March 1st, 2020 and December 31st. Local jurisdictions could make use of the capacity created through the reduction of these expenses to the general fund to, in essence, create this programming. In June, public feedback was requested related to the potential use of the newly created capacity, and based on the response received, as well as evaluating the needs of the organization and community, staff developed a proposed plan for the mayor and city council's discussions. And as the mayor and council is well aware, we had 2 council study sessions where we held, that were held specifically to obtain reactions and comments from the elected body as we began to draft this plan. It became abundantly clear to staff that there were 3 categories that the mayor and council were interested in us establishing. One for business and nonprofit assistance, one for residential assistance, as well as one for actual city programming, and I'll talk a little more about those details here in just a second. The collective dialogue and input have facilitated the recommendations outlined in this proposed community relief plan and this request for council action. Please note that that these are recommendations for your consideration, and that you have the final amounts, can actually modify the final amounts listed in any category or any specific element. Let me start, if I can, Mr. Mayor, just briefly going through the various components of this proposal. The business and nonprofit assistance program, that staff is recommending that we allocate $535,350 to this particular program. It will be comprised of 2 separate elements and activities. One, a small business assistance grant for nonprofit and small city businesses in the community that have experienced impact through the COVID-19 incident. Ultimately, there would be an application that would be finalized and would be circulated to the committee There would be a committee of up to 5 individuals that would overview these particular applications, and the staff would administer this particular component, this particular element in-house, and would issue the checks to qualifying businesses and nonprofit through that process. The second component is a request for
Larry?
Yes.
Just a question while you're on this.
Yes, sir.
The, it says, the grant would be limited to a reimbursement of up to $10,000. Is that per each applicant, or how does that work?
That it is per each applicant, and actually is considered based on the actual expenses that business has incurred during this COVID-19 incident.
And we're safe with gifting with what we're doing?
Mr. Powell, obviously there has been some level of discussion that has happened statewide based on the way that these funds were in fact allocated. I would certainly let Mr. Wallace opine more on the gift clause provisions of the statute. What we are finding is that our program has been modeled in a similar fashion as other municipalities that are attempting to utilize this funding to essentially for our business community and our nonprofits. And so I know that staff had specifically outlined caution to the mayor and council on this particular grant, but what we're finding is that many cities are utilizing it as their mechanism for distributing these funds.
Thank you.
Brett, any comments?
Sure, and a couple of things, but Mayor and Councilmember Powell, first a reminder that if you do want to seek specific legal advice on this, outside of this, you do have executive session available. But with respect to the gift clause, I'll give you the answer that you guys know I'm going to give you, which is it depends on anything that we do. But there are a number of, and I always say that because we can't insulate ourselves from challenge.
Yeah.
But having said that, there are a number of elements that I think cities and towns are using to distribute the money in this way that we believe does not violate the terms of the gift clause. One of those is the gift clause really applies to public funds in the public treasury, and most of the cases have recognized that direct funding from the federal government doesn't apply for that. So for example, owner-occupied housing, where we give out those kind of grants, through that, not subject to the gift clause challenge because it's coming specifically from the federal government for that program. And these funds, the problem really that kind of got everybody a mess is if you're Phoenix, if you are Maricopa County and you got the money directly, you just say, hey, it's straight from the federal government. But this one is essentially a pass-through. And the way the governor wrote the CARES Act, he even put in there, and we read for some of that in the resolution, that this is supposed to be maximum flexibility to use the federal CARES Act funds for your benefit. You also have a specific statutory authority in the economic development statutes that allows you to both create and retain jobs within the community. So one of the things we ask you to do in this resolution is to make a finding that you believe this is going to help create or retain jobs. And doing those two things gives you, I think, the cover under the gift clause.
So you're comfortable with it then?
I'm as comfortable as I can ever be, Mr. Powell. So you all know me, and
it depends.
It depends.
But it is always a bit of an issue. But I certainly believe that with the pass-through funding, with the economic development, and with your general powers for social welfare, that we have a very good argument, if anyone should even try to challenge it, that under these circumstances, in order to try to recover from a pandemic for which federal funds were directly allocated, that we have the best argument that we can possibly have.
Okay, go ahead, Larry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the second element of the business and nonprofit assistance is direct funding to the Casa Grande Chamber of Commerce, specifically for community marketing plan that has been established. As the mayor and council is aware, there was a fair amount of consideration given to creating a community marketing plan earlier in this year, but due to the COVID-19 incident, we have essentially delayed that. But the chamber is very interested in creating what we consider to be a first year, a primary year basis for the technical assistance to our community in the manner of marketing, and that would include 4 particular elements. One would be website design and content, the creation of a Love Local Casa Grande Passport program, establishing a social media campaign built on the platform of marketing of the community, which was previously presented to the mayor and council, which is the like it, the love it, and number 4 is the establishment of a hound program, which is created to assist local business provide near and long-term revenue producing foot traffic generation, and that is included in this particular recommendation as well. Moving along to the residential assistance programming.
Larry,
yes.
one more question.
Yes, sir.
On number 4, the HOWND, what is that, just briefly?
It actually is a contract with an outside agency that is specific, has a specific focus on marketing individual local businesses in Casa Grande to the market, and essentially attracting the business, those business customers into their business and or to essentially shop online. It really is an enhanced version of our Shop Casa Grande, Shop Local campaign, with a big emphasis on marketing by an entity that has more knowledge than others do in the community when it comes to marketing.
One of the biggest challenges for downtown is establishing foot traffic.
Right.
Do they have any way they're going to try to do that, or what?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, the program is designed so that a business, let's say it's a downtown business, can sign up, and the sign up, they then are marketed by this company and drive foot traffic to their business. And usually the way the program works is as they drive business to the business, then that business pays on a per person basis, right? That's their program. But what this will do is this will pay for that. It's going to pay for that per person fee. And we'll pay for it for a year. It's a contract with them, with Hound, and they will actually pay through it, or the chamber will pay for it through the monies that we're going to give them, and then they will drive that foot traffic to that business, and it's paid for. So the business pays nothing. So I think it's a good program to drive business, get people into this online business mode, yet still keep their bricks and mortar business and drive people to them. There's also some couponing and some BOGO
Well, if
stuff.
you drive, there's not foot traffic.
You still got to get out of your car.
No, I just, as I say, I just, most things that are designed to bring foot traffic downtown are just not doable, but at least we're trying.
Yes.
Okay.
Matt?
Tempe's using this program, I read an article.
Tempe, Queen Creek. There's a bunch of the cities up in the valley
So we're not reinventing the wheel.
that are using the Hound. Bob?
Because this is CARES Act distribution of funds, is the philosophy that by using the Hound program, that we're going to assist them to regain business that has been lost due to the COVID?
Yes, drive business back to their stores, yeah.
Okay. I just, I get a little uneasy on some of this stuff, that we don't directly tie it to the COVID. And I appreciate that recognition. It's a relatively small amount of money too, but I don't want to give the public the impression that we have this pot of money and there's some things we've always wanted to do, and so let's do them now because we have the money. So I appreciate that it's tied back to the COVID pandemic.
At least.
Follow up on that. I mean, that was a concern I had, and I think it's important to make sure that this is not just the downtown area.
No,
You know,
this
and
is
it's
for
not-
all
and
all
my
businesses.
question was to
Yeah.
make sure that it
Yeah, yeah.
wasn't just chamber members and
it-
not only businesses, but, you know, services.
It's free to any
Right.
business in the city of Casa Grande,
Right.
whether you're a chamber member or not.
Right. I just wanted to make sure,
Yeah,
because
that's
they're
fine.
spearheading it, so, you know, they are traditionally focusing on chamber members, so.
Well, their shop local program is open to everybody.
Okay.
It's not just chamber members, and they're
Okay.
gonna kind of use that
Right.
program to spearhead this program. So it's open to any business in the city of Casa Grande.
Good, and I think it's just important to get that messaging out to all the businesses
Yep,
and
yep.
make sure because people that aren't traditionally,
Yep.
you know, customers of theirs or whatever, it's just important to get that. And again, to point out, not only businesses, but services too.
Thank you. That's,
Correct.
yeah, I was going to
That's
say
true.
services.
Yes.
I like to see emphasis on that also.
It's a moderate expenditure, so I guess
It's-
we'll
yeah,
see.
It is.
Go ahead, Larry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the next element or category is the residential assistance, which is certainly one of the areas that we receive feedback from our public. And that includes 5 categories that are being recommended this evening. Unlike the proposal for our small business assistance grant, at least in my mind, this is a scenario by which we will actually be engaging our nonprofit community that have existing programming and existing capacity to ultimately push money through as a pass-through from the city. And those include utility, rent, temporary housing assistance. And I've recommended $125,000 for that program. Direct funding to food banks and entities distributing food, $25,000. Child care programs for $50,000, internet access for students of $250,000, as well as the AARP Experience Core third grade reading program, $14,000. The mayor and council was supportive of that program for a 2-year commitment of $12,000 for each fiscal year. And we learned as we were putting this program together that the third grade reading program is going to continue as anticipated, but that they needed additional budget authority of $14,000, so we've included it in this particular proposal. And so ultimately, as I mentioned before, the thought, at least in this particular mechanism, would be that we would put out a request for qualifications or proposal from the nonprofits, asking them to provide us a summary of scope of services. If they fell into one of these 5 categories, they would make application, and those applications would be considering for some level of distribution. There are the 2 exceptions to that, Mr. Mayor and Council. Obviously, the third grade reading program that I spoke about, which is a direct allocation, as well as the internet access for schools. I think the Mayor and Council would have seen in my proposal that we did receive the proposal from the school district. The proposal to, in fact, develop these mobile hotspots, these devices, is $150,000, which covers all of the schools in Casa Grande, both public and private and charter schools. It is an amount, it's been established based on amount of individual students that they felt that collectively they needed to get a router into their home. And they've also, as you can see from the proposal, have asked for mayor and council to consider some level of what I consider to be technology that would potentially create some of the hot spots around town. The devices that I spoke about a minute ago are typically used in the home. There are some potential opportunities for us to create some hot spots both at the school campus as well as around the community that there was additional requests for. I did not include this in my proposal to the mayor and council, but I know that there's the next series of federal funding that's being considered. There is some dialogue that indicates that the school districts may be getting some level of funding. So some of this is going to be about timing. As I was speaking to the superintendent at the elementary school district, that school's getting ready to start. We're not sure whether or not this money is going to be available from the federal level to the school districts to buy these pieces of equipment. I know the council has expressed a fair amount of interest in ensuring that we progress with at least acquiring this router and a year's worth of service. And so perhaps we take an incremental view where we fund $150,000, then we see what the next federal bill brings before we take the next step. I do want to point out to the council that the flexibility that I've asked in this resolution, so nicely crafted by our city attorney, is that, at least in my mind, in any of these relationships with the nonprofits, we would likely take very incremental steps. Instead of allocating all of the money in one particular setting, that perhaps there would be multiple opportunities for the nonprofit to evaluate their programming, and we can evaluate how the results and how effective it is before we allocate the next level of funding into particular groups. With that in mind, I would say that really the entire proposal and plan, I think, was really crafted around the mayor and council's perspective of the fact that this COVID-19 incident may be something that is going to last some period of time. And included in the proposal is allocating 1/2 of the money of the $6.7 million that we put into reserve and we hold at this point for mayor and council to have future consideration for the use thereof. And I think it should be noted that there were a number of projects that were recommended as part of our efforts of gleaning feedback from the community and mayor and council. It does set aside approximately $1.2 million in funds that would be specific to the 25% match to the Department of Emergency Management expenses. It does set aside roughly $800,000 to purchase of new body cameras, $16,200 of restoring the partnership funding levels, as well as information technology for remote access. It's something that we're having to reevaluate as an organization, that we may have more people working from home. We need to be prepared for that. The beautification project of the Union Pacific Bridge and crossing, and again, the reservations of funds and budget stabilization that actually would go into that category as well. All of those items would be brought back to the mayor and council individually based on the threshold. If it's $25,000 or more, we'll be bringing them back to the council individually. If it's not, if it's something, as an example, as that would be under the 25,000 threshold, which I look, and the only one that I think it could be is the 25% match. We will be making decisions at a staff level for that, but anything over the 25,000 we'll be bringing back on an individual basis to the mayor and council. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff is recommending that the mayor and council approve the proposed community relief fund plan and authorize the allocation and budget authority to each program, and authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute any and all documents and approve all actions necessary to establish and implement the direction and intent of this plan. And with that, I would pause for any questions.
Let me, if I can make a comment before I entertain council's questions. I would ask the council to, especially concerning this internet access, I know that the federal government has been talking about potential monies for the schools. I've been following it pretty closely. There's two separate bills. There's one in the Senate and there's one in the House. The House is a $3 trillion bill, and the Senate is a $1 trillion bill. And so they're so far apart right now. Whether something will even be done, I don't think we can wait for the federal government. So really want to make sure, and I like Larry's suggestion that let's spend a little bit of it now. We'll hold a little bit back. I think is a good idea. So I just wanted to say that, just a little bit of point of clarification, because I've been kind of monitoring the school and working with the elementary school and the high school and our charter schools as well. So this is not just for our quote-unquote public schools. They're all public schools, but it includes our charter schools too. So, Mr. Powell?
I just wanted to say, we've had several people on council here that have really worked on residential problems and issues, and I think the residential assistance is the most germane to treating things that happen from COVID, and I think, the different things there, those would go through who?
Mr. Powell, those would go through a nonprofit organization. We would, in essence, put out a request for proposal and ask our nonprofit community to, if they provide programming in any of these areas, they would put a proposal together and ultimately advise us the type of capacity they would have and the amount of funding that they might be interested in requesting. And we have, as I've pointed out in prior meetings, particularly as it relates to utility rent and temporary housing assistance, we've had some dialogue with the CARAs, with United Ways, with Against Abuse. We've also had discussions with some of our food banks about the distribution of this money, but ultimately we'd be asking them to put a proposal together for us to evaluate.
And it could even be used, Larry, I know this is kind of off the subject, but with our police department and vouchers.
Yes.
Because they run into the homeless, so there'd be some potential monies we could supply to the police department for them to give to the homeless, for them to have a night's stay, especially this time of year, it's so hot.
Just a clarification and then a question. Larry, if a nonprofit or business has already applied for a grant for the COVID and they have not received it, that does not exclude them from applying for ours. Does that make sense?
Right, it would not exclude the application.
Okay.
That is correct.
And then the other, just a clarification that someone had sent word to me this afternoon, their recommendation as far as the residential, and Mr. Powell had made a really good point, is that that's where people are needing it. And they had mentioned in terms of rent or utilities, and especially food banks, that if we have multiple agencies that money is going toward, that we, hopefully we will ask them to make sure there's some type of interagency agreement that they know who they're giving to and who
Right.
the others are giving to, so that, I hate to use the word double dipping, but that does not happen between, you go from one agency and get
Right.
something and you go to another agency. And so that was recommended that from a citizen that has been involved in this before, so.
That's a good point.
Donna,
Are
I
you
know
talking
that's
about the
really,
users, the persons?
to Lisa and Donna have been
Okay.
involved in it and are close to it and involved as.
Yeah.
That's an area that we certainly need to be successful in.
Yeah, we will establish some sort of MOU or some
Right.
memorandum of understanding between each organization, and I'm sure that will be spelled out.
Yeah, just so
Correct.
they talk to each other.
Right.
Yeah, no, that makes
Cross-referencing.
sense.
Yeah.
Lisa?
Well, CARA does have that system, they have that SPDAT form, but then it's so long and detailed, you don't want people for this. And
No.
especially during these times, like you said, the whole eviction moratorium or whatever is being lifted already. I think it was effective
I think they've
Friday or
extended.
whatever. Oh,
I
they
think they
extended it?
extended it.
No,
Okay,
it's
s-
extended.
They
Yeah,
extended
they
it.
extended
So
it.
I think now is a critical time, and
Yeah.
and that was my question is, we've allocated 464,000, but in this program, we have the 1.1 million, it looks like, that we have kind of there's flexibility on where that money goes.
That's correct.
So how is that gonna be spent? So if we see that businesses, because of course, businesses are key. I mean,
Right.
we have so many businesses that are struggling right now. So if we see that we have way over $500,000 of a request come in, at what point are we going to take that 1.1 million that we have, some flexibility and either allocate it towards rental assistance or business?
That's
How is
up
that
to
going
us.
to happen,
Right.
Larry?
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilwoman Fitzgibbons, one of the messages that was delivered to staff very loud and clear is that you wanted rec on this particular program. And so what the city attorney, Mr. Wallace, and I have talked about is potentially adding an agenda item to each council agenda so that we can give you just a 5-10 minute overview and ultimately advise you how things are progressing within all of these funds. Because at any time, we can come back to the mayor and council with another resolution, and you can redistribute any of the available funds that may not have been spent. You can work to allocate additional money that you've got in capacity and/or that you've set aside as reserve. I'm envisioning from a staff's perspective that this is going to be something that will routinely be discussed and ultimately give the mayor and council flexibility to bring more money to the table. But the second goal that the mayor and council was articulating is the fact that we needed to get this money out there as rapidly as possible. So you'll see that the resolution has been granted or has been drafted, giving me more authority than I normally would have so that we can quickly expedite these these funds into the community. But I see the balance with that is some type of a report that will happen routinely to the
Yeah,
mayor and
and
council.
Larry, I think there's a certain amount of flexibility in here to the council. For example, I just use this as an example, but let's say the food banks in 25,000, we get $50,000.
Right.
I think we have the flexibility to add to that.
And I think the
That's right.
key is what you said. I mean, so we don't really need an emergency clause because we're giving you the authority. So we don't have to
That's right.
go through with another reading, and
That's
we
right.
can move on this pretty
That's right.
quickly. Is that
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. And then another clarification, and Councilmember McBride brought this up, but I just wanted clarification. So if someone applied for the personal, what is it? PPP. And they receive that, they are not eligible for this. Is that correct?
Currently, the way this is drafted is that the business owner would have to report 2 items to the evaluation group. Number one is that they've had some loss in their income stream.
Right.
And
24 is it?
25% is the threshold that's been established
Okay.
in the application today. And the second component of that is whether or not they've received any PPP loans.
Okay.
So my thought was that we could ultimately put the 5-person group together
Okay.
for some level of evaluation, finalize that application, and ultimately get them out on the street ASAP. But so I do think that we're going to want to have some level of control over the award of these funds, such as whether or not a business has lost income, whether or not they've had additional costs, whether or not they've gotten other monies, and whether or not they're still open today. There's going to be some criteria that we're going to want to establish from that group as we evaluate, that we establish and we essentially use to consistently evaluate the applications that come in the 30-day window.
Okay, and I'm sorry, but I just want to clarify. Well, first, I do want to thank you guys, because I know this has been a huge project, and, you know, we've spent a lot of time, and I really want to get it moving. I mean, we
Yeah.
need to get this money out there. So I really do thank, you know, all of you guys, Brett and Larry, for work you've done. I think it's a great program. But I do want to just make sure that we're getting the messaging out. You know, how are we going to get it? You know, I was getting my nails done the other day, and, you know, this woman had no idea, and obviously she's struggling. So how are we going to get the messaging to all businesses, our minority businesses, I mean, I just want to make sure that we're being fair and, you know, getting the information out to as many people as we can that are hurting.
Yeah, so typically we would utilize a combination of local media with our newspaper. Obviously, individuals watch what we're talking about here on our website and on our television channel tonight. We will have an aggressive social media campaign, which is becoming an effective tool for us, and we'll have it on our COVID-19 webpage as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd like, I'm gonna work with Latanya on this, but we'll do some live streaming stuff. We'll
Right.
try and do some Facebook Live presentations, and if you guys are interested in being part of that, you know, let me know. But we'll definitely get the message out there.
Okay.
And the
Think that's
chamber,
it.
Pardon me?
Yeah,
the chamber as well?
Yes, yeah, the chamber, absolutely. Chamber and Main Street, both organizations, as well as obviously our Facebook and our contacts, which is numerous, and our website also.
Okay.
So it'll be all available there.
And last point. You know, and Bob, you touched on this as far as, you know, designating these funds. We want to make sure that we're using it for COVID type, you know,
Right.
not just projects that we wanted. But when we received this money, it was for, you know, public safety, and then, of course, it opened up the money to help with COVID relief. And I'm just really happy that we put the body cams in this project. I mean, this is something that, yes, we've been trying to implement in our community for a long time, but we haven't had the funding. And this is a great opportunity for us to get this and, provide safety in our community, transparency. And I just appreciate, you know, the police department and our staff and all of us, you know, realizing that this is important for our community. So I'm just happy to see that you had that in there too. Had to put it in.
Matt?
Lisa, Councilwoman Fitzgibbons, thank you for bringing up the allocation, because that was something I was gonna talk. And after 30 days, I bet one of our piles is gonna be a lot bigger than the other, so that we can figure out where the money's needed more. And the important thing is the speed and getting it directly to people who need it. One thing I wanted to ask about, we had touched on, and I didn't really see it in this, is our nonprofit partners we already have, and they did a reduction in their funding this year. Were we gonna restore that?
Yeah, we're
Yeah, that
restoring
was
the
in
partnership
there.
funding.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed,
It's
okay,
there. Yeah.
thank you. I thought that was in there, but I wanted to make sure.
16,000.
And the other thing I was thinking is, it says 2 council members, but maybe we could take shifts or something, so we could all share the duties if it's needed, so that we can all have a part in it. And most everyone said what I want to say, but I'm just, thankful, and I'm glad we're holding some back, because again, we're gonna see this, one of these piles, as I
Don't
put it,
know how this is gonna end.
is gonna be a lot better, and yes, the ending is not written yet. The other problem I had with this is the acronym is just terrible. I wanted to come up with something good. So I'm gonna propose this, whether or not, is CG Cash, Caring and Serving Hope. So anyway, something a little more catchy than the RFP. It doesn't have to be that, but,
CG cares.
Yeah,
CG
CG cares.
Say it again, say it again, Matt.
Caring and Serving Hope, My wife came up, I was like, oh, we're driving for a while, maybe you can help me come up, and it took her like 3 minutes. So that's the creative side of my life. But something, a good catchphrase, or cares, or, something so that people know this is the COVID money and not just something that's going on, because so many people have been affected, and the other thing is get out to our nonprofits. And it does say one thing like physical presence of a nonprofit, but I know some nonprofits don't really have a building. Is that gonna be a barrier? If they have a PO box?
Most of them have a location that they're doing business in Casa Grande.
Because I'm thinking like Kiwanis and Rotary, and, that's not gonna be an issue. Okay. So, I'm
Bob?
excited.
You done?
I guess so.
I
You
think
paused, Matt, sorry.
I have a couple of points to make. Number one, thank you for getting this together so quickly, and it does very well reflect the opinions and desires that council have expressed. So I really do appreciate that. I wanted to point out that the residential assistance, so important. Every night on the news, I see personal stories of people that are struggling, hitting the food banks, looking for assistance for their to pay their home and utilities, people that have filed for unemployment and haven't gotten anything yet. So we know they're out there, we know they're hurting. Also, lots of stories about what the fall is bringing with schools. I think I heard you say that the internet access for students will be available to the public school and also charter school?
Correct.
And how will the charter schools how will that money find its way to charter schools? And I have a tag-on question to that. By charter schools, does that include parochial schools as well?
I believe that it does. This is the, so ultimately, the committee has, the collective committee of the various schools have worked together to essentially move down the path with this scope of services for this internet service. Councilmember Huddleston and the elementary school district, the Casa Grande Elementary School District, is actually taking the lead, and they will be the entity that we will enter into an agreement with, and then they intend to distribute the devices back to the various schools, and that includes the Casa Grande Elementary School, Casa Grande Union High School, Legacy Traditional, Grande Innovations Academy, ASU Preparatory Academy, and the Learning Hub. And so if there's others that's not on there, I'll definitely make inquiry about that, but.
Okay.
Sam Anthony.
Thank you. My last point, and Lisa, I hate to contradict what you said about the body cams. As much as I like that project and I want it, I have to say up front, I'm going to have issue with tying that to COVID. And I just feel obligated to put that out there and to clarify that all of these projects that are listed in that last paragraph will all be brought back to council in one form or another for us to debate and pass or not, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Matt, I cut you off. Did you have anything you wanted to finish with? I apologize.
That's okay. Thank you, Mayor. It was touched on by my colleague over there about the education. A big part, they're all of our kids, and so I was glad to see that all the schools are included in that.
Okay. Mr. Powell?
You know, one of the things, I don't want to seem to be negative, but this COVID isn't over with.
No.
And there was an article that just about blew me away in the Phoenix paper recently that said, one of these days, we're going to look back and say the 2020s were the good old days, because it's going to get a lot worse. And hopefully it won't, but I think we have to try to be careful with the monies, that we have enough money to handle if there's a second wave, a third wave, or whatever. I mean, hopefully they get vaccines and they put an end to it, and I think all of us feel like that's going to happen. And I pray to God every night that it will happen. But if it doesn't happen, if it does get worse, we do need to be prepared for that, and I just wanted to put that in.
Well said. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing no other comments or questions, then I will call for a resolution, please.
Resolution number 5253, a resolution of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, establishing the City of Casa Grande Relief Fund Plan, authorizing the city manager to develop the elements of the plan, funding the elements of the plan subject to certain restrictions, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute documents and actions necessary to implement the plan, authorizing the expenditure of funds for the purposes of implementing the plan and for the administration of the plan, authorizing disbursement and transfer of funds as necessary to implement the plan, and providing for severability of the resolution and its elements.
Mayor McFarland, I move approval of resolution number 5253 as presented.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Huddleston.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Cortzen.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Absolutely, yes. All right. Well, we don't have an executive session tonight then, so let's move to reports. And I will start to my immediate left. Mr. Powell, you get to go first.
Well, I wanted to take up for what's happening. We're having our history destroyed right now in a lot of ways in America. And I saw this and I thought you would appreciate it, but this is what happened this week in Arizona history, August 2nd through 8th, going way, way back. And on August 2nd, on this date in 1905, unknown assassins fired into a small group of Silver Bell miners, killing 2 and wounding 1, and for no apparent reason. On this date in 1929, passengers on intercontinental trains, which were delayed by washouts, cleaned out food supply, and many small towns. The town of Bowie reported nothing left but coffee. On August 3rd, which is 100 years ago, on this date in 1918, the Casa Grande ruins became a national monument. On this date in 2000, wait a minute. Okay, on August 4th, on this date in 1859, the first issue of the Weekly Arizonan was published by J. Howard Wells, an editor of the Weekly Arizonan, was the first newspaper in Arizona having established itself in Tubac. On this date in 1895, the first packing house in Arizona was opened in Phoenix. The plan included 400 acres, and if you go down to Mexico, 162 hectares. And alfalfa, a system of gates, lanes, driveways leading to slaughterhouse, and a place for sausages and cooling rooms. On August 5th, on this date, Grady Gamage, former president of Arizona State College, now Arizona State University, was born. On this date, 1995, Pete Kitchen was one of the earliest ranchers in Santa Cruz Valley, died. On this date, 1911, William Green of the Green Cattle Company died after being thrown from a buggy, and he was really instrumental in a lot of things. Colonel Green had a place down in Mexico, and he actually took the Arizona Rangers down there into Mexico to stop something that was going on. People were leaving their company, so and they were told never to come back again. But he was quite a guy. On this date, the 1st Arizona Regiment was drafted into the United States Army. By the end of World War I, 8,113 men in Arizona had entered National Guard. 1,854 were in the regular Army, 1,269 in the Navy, and 147 in the Marines. 327 Arizonas died in military service. On this date in 1931, the Arizona Pacific passenger train, the Argonaut, was derailed east of Yuma, killing 2 and injuring 15. On August 6th, on this date, Vicente Hernandez, keeper of a general store and a jewelry shop in Tucson, and his wife were beaten to death and robbed. 2 days later, a citizen committee hanged the murderers from the gallows in the plaza. On this date in 1879, the first ice-making machine in Arizona became into operation in Tucson. On this date in 1880, the first bar of bullion was turned out from the busy smelter. On this day in 1891, an earthquake followed by a tidal wave caused extensive damage to the Cocopa Indian villages and lands on the lower Colorado River. On this day in 1896, Blackjack Christian gang attempted to rob the International Bank of Nogales, but were defeated by John Desert, president of the bank, who held off 5 men until help arrived. On this date in 1833, Frederick Title, who became Arizona's 7th territorial governor, was born in Pennsylvania. On this date in 1909, Arthur Bayless was founder of A.J. Bayless Markets was born. On this date in 1922, the Tucson Citizen reported that I.T. Frazier, State Highway Maintenance Superintendent, talked to Cochise County officials about a house which was standing in the middle of the highway between Douglas and Rodeo. On this date in 1876, Dr. Walter Reed reported for duty as the post surgeon at Fort Lowell. On this date in 1930, cloudburst over the state caused extensive damage. A trestle gave way near Winslow. And that's our history report for tonight.
Hopefully we're
That's
gonna-
thanks to Harold
Hopefully
Hitching.
we're not gonna get a test on that.
No. Well, that's a good idea.
Douglas and Rodeo.
Okay. Lisa?
On this day, no. Okay, census. We're getting almost to the point where people are gonna be knocking on your doors. So for those of you that know people that haven't completed their census, please go on to www.2020census.gov and fill out your 10-question
I think
questionnaire.
it's my 2020 census. isn't
My
it?
2020? Okay.
Yeah, it's got a my in
22.
there. There's a my in there.
So get on there, and they are going to start going to doors. And I think the Census Committee did send something to the chief to let his people know, that people are going to be knocking on doors. So you might want to remind them, with the police officers, if they get calls, if they get people complaining, the census people are going to be going out.
That's a good point.
But I was excited because, the committee, we've been working hard. They have new banners are up. You'll probably notice that. And we finally got over, or into the 60% now. We were at that 59 for several weeks. And so we are at a 60.3% response rate. So that's good, but we have a long way to go.
State's catching us, though.
They are. They're at a 59.5. So a reminder with COVID testing, CVS is doing testing right now. If anyone needs a test, you can drive through, and they're doing the self-swabs. The antibody test, U of A is doing a study. I personally went and got the antibody test. I was exposed and tested negative, but I just think I may have.
You're at Sun Life, right?
Yes, it was at Sun Life.
Yeah, Sun Life.
So I did that, so if anyone thinks that they want to participate in that study, you can go on to U of A antibody test. And then, let's see, Donna and I participated in the Education Roundtable, and I'll tell you, it was eye-opening. You know, we are not education experts, but there's so much that these people are facing right now. And they're really doing their best, and there's so much criticism, and, you know, there's just so much, you know, tension and stress within our families. And I must say, the superintendent, Dr. Gonzalez, is doing such a great job with her staff and trying to look at, you know, what the challenges are that, you know, many of these people were facing. And when I personally brought up, you know, businesses, because of course having, you know, our own business, you know, we have to figure out how we're going to accommodate our employees when their children are home teaching. How do we accommodate? And she was so nice, because she said, well, you know what? I can't take care of everything, you know, so, but my point is I think us as business owners, as community members, if we work for nonprofits, we need to take a part of this also and do our part in having these relationships with the school system and to see what we can do to do our part, because they're facing tremendous challenges, and they are asking for nonprofits and volunteers to help, because there's going to be people that have to go to work. And so they're really trying to establish those relationships with some of the nonprofits to help out. So, and let's see, and then Councilmember Powell was talking a little bit about the Casa Grande ruins. So I just wanted to do a shout out to a personal story, that someone that was and took a picture, but my husband actually is the new president of the Arizona Bar Association. And so in the Arizona Attorney magazine, he took a picture in front of the Casa Grande ruins, and but it was just exciting for those of you guys. And Brett, I don't know if you read the article yet, but it's just a nice story of him growing up in Casa Grande, and it's just a tribute to this community, and it's just so exciting as a council member, of course my husband, but as a council member to have that representation at a state level from our community. And so it's just nice. And the city of Coolidge and Maricopa, because he obviously serves them as their city attorney, but it's a great article, and it has a beautiful picture in there with Casa Grande ruins. So that's pretty much it for me. And vote. Tomorrow is election day, so please remember to vote. If you need to find out where your polling location is, you can go to the Pinal County Elections and put in your address, and they'll tell you the location. So get out there and vote.
And you can also check to see if your absentee ballot has
That's
been
right.
received. Bob?
Nothing on top of that, other than the reminder. I think our charter, this is actually the election tomorrow, runoff if necessary, but it's very important for your local city patriotism. Go and vote for your favorite council member and/or mayor candidate. Thank you.
All right. Donna?
Just a couple of things. I just want to reiterate what Lisa has said about the educational town hall. I just felt that Dr. Gonzalez was a rock star on that. Everything that was mentioned, she had an answer for. The innovative ideas that the staff in Casa Grande is doing is amazing, and we're not experts, but I was just amazed at all the extra stuff that they are doing, trying to make this work. And so, you know, having grandkids that just started school today online for the first time in another city, they're not near where we are at all. And so I think that we do need to support, you know, our local education and help people understand that they're new to all this stuff too. So, but kudos to Dr. Gonzalez. Also just wanted to mention, yes, tomorrow's voting. I am proudly sitting on that ballot with Lisa and the mayor and Jeff Lavender, and I am so proud of our city and how responsible we have been to each other. And, you know, it's a different time, and I'm proud to be sitting here with both of you and all of you, but please get out and vote. I will say that I saw today where they're not doing the voting at Dorothy Powell Center. It just came out today. Instead, they're supposed to go to Trinity. So for people that usually vote at the Dorothy Powell Center, you can't do that.
Yeah, they did change some of the polling places, so if you don't know where to go, make sure you,
Right, that's the one
Have
they
somebody
brought
at
out
Pinal County
today.
register.
The county did a press release on that.
I sent out
And then kudos to Kevin and his staff. I was going down Casa Grande, Maricopa Highway, and saw a very big pothole that somebody just about wrecked going through. It had not been there several days before because my husband goes up and down that road. I thought I would do due diligence and call this morning, and they already had it fixed. So thank you very much, Kevin. So that's it.
Thank you, Donna. Matt?
Yes, I did want to say, as we always say on the council, vote early, vote often. And tomorrow, I proudly will endorse all 3 candidates for city council and 1 candidate for mayor. I can officially say that here. So, but there's a lot of other important election or races on that, especially local, where it makes a huge difference. Just 1, 2 votes can always decide that race. So make sure and do that. I'm also excited to get some technology. Hopefully we can have remote meetings for like the youth commission, because we're really challenged right now. And I want to tell them all, they're saying, hey, are we missing anything? And we're saying, we're still trying to figure this out. We were waiting for the school district to figure some of their stuff out. So if any of the youth commissions are watching, I'm sure they're riveting TV that we put out. They're all watching, but we're working on it, and we will let you know, and we're sending information to them. But it goes along with the education, and you guys both mentioned it. It's so important, and at least I was gonna say, as a businesses too, help your employees. I mean, that's where I see it a lot too, because you're gonna have to be lenient, and just remember, there's a lot of stress going around, and just be nice to each other, because especially with school starting, it's gonna be tough on all of us. So anyway, that's about it. Good meeting tonight, and thank you guys for, I know you have nothing else to do except for work on our CARES funding, so, thank you guys. It turned out really good.
Thank you, Matt. Mary?
Couple of things. You've said pretty well covered that. Over the last 10 days or so, I've come into contact with parents that have young children, parents that have high school seniors. This is their senior year. And then I've been listening to these teachers talking, and they're doing their Zoom meetings and working from home, and that. I haven't talked to one teacher yet that has said they do not want to be in that classroom unless they're forced to because of health reasons. They are very concerned about bringing things home from school and that, but they want to be there with their kids just as much as the parents want the kids to be there with the teachers. And the one thing was, what they were saying was the idea to be able to have that eye contact, and especially when you're dealing with high school kids, that they need that kind of interaction and that sort of thing. So keep in mind, I know some teachers have been criticized, and people have said, I've heard comments, oh, they just don't want to be there. Oh, believe me, they want to be there. They really do. Also is the struggle I've watched, and we were saying about getting information out. It's so hard getting information. When I was growing up, you got the Casa Grande Dispatch, and you had that little, thing going down the neighborhood, and that. Getting word out is so difficult now. If you can take the opportunity, I know any small business person I see or talk to or whatever, I encourage them, go to the city website, do that. But parents and everybody, make that extra effort. Remember, you have to Google it. Just Google it, and it'll come up. Schools in Casa Grande, is school going to be in session? So I encourage you, when you have your phones, take that initiative. Groups, city, I feel like the city bends over backwards getting information out. The mayor's constantly doing something, and we need to take that responsibility on ourselves for doing that. And then the last thing too is I'm getting out and doing a little more shopping here and there, that I'm not doing it quite online like I was. And I just really, really appreciate watching everybody being courteous. I know that there are people behind those masks that don't want to be behind those masks, that it's against some of their beliefs, but they're doing it anyway, and I thank you for doing it, because you're keeping us all safe. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Just some Some housekeeping, as you know, we're going to be starting the judicial appointment process, and all council members have been asked to give a name of a committee member to Larry, and that's, please have that to him by Friday, if you would, please. I know he's received a couple, but he hasn't heard from everybody, so.
Now, the five on there, are they already appointed on?
No, this is a whole new process. If we want the same people, we can, but those were the ones from last year, or 2 years ago.
Okay.
So if you want that same person, then make sure you
Mayor?
give that name to Larry.
If I could, certainly you can remind council members to get the names to Larry, but since this is something that will be on a future council agenda, we can't discuss it here tonight.
Okay.
All right, so don't ask me any questions, Mr. Powell. Sorry. Sorry, Brett. Also, I just got an email, and this is a change, it's from the Census Bureau, that the collections will end, field collections and online self-responses will end now September 30th. It was October 31st, so they've shortened it by 30 days. So just make sure, we're getting that word out there, so we have 30 less days now than we had yesterday. So just make sure we're getting that information out. And it's because they have to have theirs in, I think, by December 31st, so there's some statutory requirements. But I mentioned it earlier, but there's two versions in the House, one version in the House, one version in the Senate in terms of the next round of assistance. One's called the SMART Act and the other's called the HEROES Act. And so keep an eye on both of those. Both of them do have direct payments to cities, which was not in the first round. So that's good news. The bad news is they can't decide on which one they want to do. And so that may cause all of us problems. That's it there. Let's see. I did have some updates on the COVID infection rates. They look like they've stabilized, at least for the state of Arizona and Pinal County and 85122. So they're still higher than they were at our low point. So be vigilant, continue to wear your mask, continue to space 6 feet from people. Be smart, as I like to say, and let's beat this thing. I know we can. Just to give, if I get in an argument with somebody, it's usually over the fact that this is just like the flu. That typically is the reaction that I get from somebody who's kind of a anti-mask person, or somebody who doesn't think that the COVID virus is a serious thing. And in fact, the flu does infect a lot more people every year. It's somewhere between 39 and 56 million people for a whole year. And yes, the number of infections for the United States for COVID is only 4.6, call it 4.7 million people. The difference is that the number of deaths from the flu are 24,000 a year. So far, in the first 6 months of this year with COVID, our death rate is 154,000, almost 155,000 people. So your chance of dying from the COVID infection is 50 times greater than it is from a flu. So there's a difference, okay? So I try and remind people of that, and sometimes I get into arguments, and I usually don't have my data with me, so I can't remember all the numbers. But anyway, we are stabilizing, and that's good, and I want to thank everybody for really being vigilant. I know it's been hard. I know we're done with it. I know everybody's done with it, but we have a little bit of a road still to hoe. To Mr. Powell's point, this is still with us. We still need to maintain our vigilance and be safe. So I could talk for another 5 minutes, but I won't. Anyway, just want to say thanks to everybody. Thank you to my fellow council members, and for all the good work, and staff for all your hard work on this whole CARES program. I think it's going to be good. And I look forward to having some additional conversations on it. So thanks, everybody, for all you do. And if there's nothing else, council meeting is
I
adjourned.
just wanted to thank the mayor, but we need to see if we can get him to be a little more competitive.